Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Find My Past Live. My name is Ellie. I run social media for Find My Past, and thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you've all had a lovely week. I hope you've made some progress in your research, and I hope you're all in fine fettle today. Please also say hi to Niall. He is in the comments today. He's going to be answering any questions you might have. Please do just drop me a quick comment, say hello, let me know that everything's working okay and that you can hear and see me okay. If you're a regular viewer, welcome back. It's always so lovely to see so many of you returning every week for this nice laid back chat about family history, about new records, and about what we're going to be talking about this week. If you're new, hello, nice to see you here. We do these live sessions on Facebook twice a week. We do a more laid back one like we're going to do today on a Friday, and then on a Wednesday, usually midweek, we have an expert session. And if you've not caught this week's one yet, make sure you go back and watch it. We had our very own Jen Baldwin with special guest Thomas McKenzie and also special guest community member Donna, and they were discussing one of her research brick walls. It was a really, really good session. I learned so much from it. I was manning the comments. So if you've not caught it yet, go and watch it back, make a couple of notes. And there's also some handy resources that were shared in that comment thread as well. If you do miss any of our live sessions, don't worry. They are best watched live, in my opinion, because it means you can talk amongst each other in the comments and you can ask live questions. But if you can't watch live, go back and watch them on demand. You can pause them, you can take notes. They are available on Facebook under our video section and also on YouTube, and there should be closed captioning available as well for you. So before I get into what we're going to be talking about today, let's say hello to some of you in the comments. There's lots coming in already. We've got William, we've got Nicole, Anya, Karen, Paul, Linda. We've got Elaine, Rita, happy Friday. I know, I'm so pleased it's Friday. We've got Deirdre, Rosie, Jackie from Clacton-on-Sea in Essex, Joan from sunny Vancouver. I'm glad it's sunny where you are, Joan. And also in Canada saying it's sunny. We've got Jane and we've got Roz from Massachusetts in the USA. Daphne says she's in the middle of a thunderstorm in Somerset. Well, I'm glad that's not reached me yet. We've got Anya from sunny Fife. We've got Anne here as well. Hilary in the Conwy Valley in Wales. We've got Maureen, Ellen. Hi, Ellen. Katie from Cornwall. Moira, Dawn. Of course, there's lots of you today. This is lovely. I love it. I love seeing you all here. I love seeing regular viewers return. I also like seeing new faces pop up in the comments as well. It brings me so much joy. Patricia's in France. Maureen says the weather in Ireland is awful. That's a shame. I'm hoping it brightens up a little bit for you. Beverly from London, Ontario, and Canada, rainy and cool. Wanda from Tennessee. Lovely. Okay. Right, let's have a quick rundown of what we're going to be talking about today, because I'm going to be honest, there's a lot for us to get through today, and I'm very wary about putting it into an hour because I'm worried we won't get our tea if I talk for too long. So we're going to have a look today at what we've added to Find My Past this week, and there are a lot of them. Because if you don't know, we add new records to Find My Past every single week and more newspapers. So this means that every week you have a new chance to find a new ancestor, break down a brick wall, and maybe add a new branch to your family tree. You might even discover a new clue, or you might go on a little trail of breadcrumbs that will actually lead you to the answer you're looking for. So it's always important to come and see what we've added every week, because it's going to be useful for you. We're going to have a quick look at question of the week. Thank you to everybody who has already submitted an answer to this. If you haven't already and you'd like to, pop it in the comments and we will have a look at those a little bit later on. And question of the week is, I want you to tell me about your porcupine-telling ancestors when it comes to birth dates. Why did they lie? And why might they have forgotten? So we're going to have a look at that. Then we're going to have a very, very quick chat at photos, because I found some and I would really like to share them with you, but there is a purpose to this, and I will come to this a little bit later on. We're also going to have a look at a Welsh colony in Argentina that you might not have heard of, because we have been focusing on Welsh family history this week. as you might have seen on Facebook, Instagram, across our social media pages. And then we're going to have a look at the evolution of birthdays. When did we start celebrating the day we were born? And this ties into our question of the week about remembering or forgetting exact birth dates. Lovely. Now, before I move on to new records, let's have another quick look at the comments and see who else where we can welcome today. Let's have a look. We've got Paul from West Sussex, another Paul from Guildford, Nora from Texas, Prynhawn Da Nini, lovely to see you. Anya sending some sun to your corner, thanks. We've got Patricia in Aspie de la Zouche. We've got Jerry in Northern California. Hello, Georgia. We've got Shirley. Sorry, I'm a little late, still working, looking forward to this today. No worries, this is going to be really chilled out, everybody. I hope you've got your beverage of choice. I was going to have a slice of cake with me, but I thought that'd be a bit bizarre if I ate cake while I was talking to you. So no cake, we'll just we'll stick with water for now. Niall saying in the comments, hands up if you have Welsh heritage. Ah, 2 hands up for me. Very Welsh for me. Fantastic. So what we'll do is move on to new records of the week, and there are a lot to get through. Now, normally when I have a look at our new record releases, I like to go into the records and I like to find examples for you, just to show you what you can actually find. But because there's so much to get through, I'm not going to do that this week. So I'm just going to have to rely on all of you to go into these new records, have a search around, and tell me what you find. I really always love to know what you've been finding. So let's, as I said, move on to these, because otherwise none of us are going to get dinner today, because I'll be still going at 9 o'clock this evening. So the big collection we've added this week, this is brand new. We've added some Welsh probate records, and we've added over, I think, is it nearly or over, around 800,000 of these. And these are for the years 1544 to 1858. Now, these are abstracts of original documents from the Anglican Church, and the information available does vary from document to document and diocese to diocese. But the kind of information you can expect to get would be names, and you usually get a primary person as a name and a secondary person. You get the date the will was written, sometimes the date of probate, sometimes occupations and residences as well, which are really handy. And also, you can often get names of the executors, the witnesses, beneficiaries. There are original images attached as well. So what do we always say? Make sure you check the original image. Do bear in mind that with some of these records, the first name is abbreviated. So make sure that you broaden your search query a little bit first time round, which is another thing we always say in these sessions. Make sure you search broadly to begin with. Also, if you remember from my live session with Steve a few weeks ago, where we looked at wills and probate records, we learned that the magic cutoff date was 1858. So up until that date, wills and probate were handled by the church and by consistory courts. So this is why these ones finish in 1858. However, if you are looking for wills and probate records for after this date, we have a fantastic collection, which is England and Wales probate records. So go and check those out. Also, my apologies for sniffling a little bit. I do have a little bit of a cold. I will try and keep sniffling to a minimum. So what I wanted to highlight with these particular records, so these new Welsh probate records, obviously a lot of us with Welsh roots will know that patronymic surnames can be a little bit of a headache for us. I am a Jones on my father's side, and how many Joneses do you come across when you're doing your research? Loads, and you're not even related to them half the time. So when you're searching these records, I think the important field to note when you're looking at the transcription, when you're then going to look at the original image, are the other people named on the record. So the beneficiaries, the executors, etc. Use those people to work out whether that particular record you found is the one for your ancestor, that's the correct person. Say it's the correct William Jones, for example. So use that information and then cross-reference it with other sources. That would be my top tip for researching these. I'm really interested to know, as I said, what you will find in these. So go and have a look over the weekend. I'm sure they will keep you very busy Let me know next week, or you can always, come and give us a comment on social media or in the Find My Past forum and let me know what you found, because I always like to hear. Next up, we have a lot more parish registers for Carnarvonshire. So we've added 42,000 baptisms, 13,000 marriages, and 25,000 burials, and therefore Llanbeblig. So if you've got ancestors from there, you know what you're doing this weekend. You're going to explore those parish registers. And then we've also got some Montgomeryshire memorial inscriptions. So we've got around 17,000 of those. So if I've talked about monumental inscriptions a lot, but they're super, super helpful, because most of the time you get extra information that you wouldn't normally get from a simple death record, for example. So go and check those out. And then we've also got some Denbighshire burials. We've got about 37,000 Denbighshire burials for Wrexham Cemetery. I definitely need to go and look at these, because my Jones is actually settled in Wrexham after moving from Merioneth. So I need to go and have a look at these this weekend. And hopefully I can update you next time as well. And the big thing I want to talk about this week as well, we've added 10 new newspapers to the website this week. And 5 of those are actually Welsh. So this is really exciting. So we've added one that is called the Carmarthen Journal. It claims to be Wales's oldest newspaper, though there are some of the titles that claim that. It was founded in 1810, and we've added a huge range of dates that aren't inclusive. So they start in 1821 and end in 1911, but those are not inclusive across that broad spectrum there. We've also added the Star of Gwent, which was formerly the Monmouth, Glamorgan and Brecon Herald. This was founded in 1852, and for this particular title, we've added 1853 to 1866, and then we've also added 1901 to 1903. Then we've also got the Pontypridd Observer, we've got the Radnor Express, and we've also got the Port Talbot Guardian. So those are the 5 new Welsh titles we've got. And then over into Ireland, we've got the Waterford New Letter, or Newsletter, it's one or the other. That ran from 1800 to 1917. For Northern Ireland, we've got the Strabane Weekly News. We've got a title for Manchester. We've added the Manchester Daily Examiner and Times, and we've added many years for this as well. But again, those are not inclusive. So those are 1856 up to 1994. So a nice broad spectrum of dates for you there. Diane saying, yay, more newspapers. I know, I love it when we add lots of new newspapers. I'm excited. And then finally, the last new newspaper we've added this week is the Manchester Guardian. And this is actually the famous forerunner of the national newspaper, which still runs today, which is the Guardian. This first appeared in 1821, and it was founded by a cotton merchant. He had this chap who was called John Edward Taylor. He had support from nonconformist businessmen. And in its infancy, this paper actually championed mill owners. However, it was vocally, and I mean vocally, opposed to the slave trade. Some of the articles that we found in there are well worth going to have a look at. It also later supported women's suffrage. So for this particular title, so the Manchester Guardian, we've added 1821 to 1828. And I love it when we add earlier newspapers, because I just think they're amazing. And we've also added new pages to 4 existing titles. So we've added new pages to the Sporting Chronicle, the Glamorgan Gazette, the Carnarvon and Denbigh Herald, and also the Dundee Courier. Yay, Dundee. Lovely. So those are all the new records that you've got to explore this weekend. So if you're stuck for things to do, that's what you can do. So before we move on to question of the week, I'll give you all another chance to add something into the comments. So I want to know if any of your ancestors lied about their age or forgot about their age, and why they may have done that. So I sometimes find with my own family history is that years of birth can be at least a year out either side, but they can also be wildly different. So they tend to change from being a year or 2 out when they're a young person, and by the time they pass away, when they're a little bit older, that you could be maybe 5 or 10 years out. So yeah, let me know if you can guess the discrepancy with your particular ancestor. I did have some of these submitted beforehand. So I'll read those out in a moment. But what's important to note is that if we're looking at civil registration, right, this only came in 1837 in England and Wales, and later again in Scotland and Ireland in particular. So before then, before civil registration came in, you'd have only have had a baptism record, and that doesn't actually, it doesn't normally, it does in some cases, it doesn't normally record the actual birth date, it records the baptism date. And also people were sometimes baptized a little bit, a little bit later on. My own little sister, for example, she was baptized, I think she was about 1.5, and she tripped up the vicar during the service. And she will absolutely love me for saying this. But yeah, she's not listening anyway, so it's fine. So the other thing to note as well with birth dates is that on the census returns, they didn't actually ask for birth dates, they asked their ages. So people would note down their age as they remembered them or as they wanted them to be. So before we look at the ones you are adding into the comments now, I'm just going to read out a few we had pre-submitted. So William says that a relative changed his date of birth by a few months so he could sign up to the army in World War II. And my grandma always said her parents were married after the first child was born. Turns out they got married before the first child was born, but by a few months. Kim says my great-grandfather had 3 different years of birth and also several different names, but that's another story. Yeah, I think that's a tale for another day, Kim. We'll have to do another session on our ancestors changing their names to make our lives difficult. We'll have to do another one on that. What else have we got here? I've noted one here, but I for some reason I've not put down the name, so my apologies for this. My dad used to say, age doesn't matter, you're here, aren't you? That probably explains why he was 39 for 15 years and always mistook mine and my younger brother's age. I think that is a common saying, at least nowadays. It's sort of you're only as old as you feel, which is fine. It's not a crime to forget your age as such. It's just when you tell porkies, I suppose. We've also got Ellie who says my granddad lied about his age to sign up. I don't think that's unusual actually. Glenda says my grandma went to get her pension here in New Zealand and they couldn't find her birth. She gave her name as she thought, showed a different birth date, and then they discovered, when they were doing the family tree, they actually discovered she had a sister that was born in a different place. And one was called Margaret and one was called Maggie, and the father actually then registered the wrong name by accident. So I think it's sort of tinged with a little bit of sadness there, because it was obviously maybe a sister that didn't survive. It does happen, it does happen where birth dates are confused slightly, and they're not the be all and end all. I'm not saying they are. I find it fascinating. Last one I had submitted was Janet, who said my paternal grandpa was unsure. His entry on the 1939 register is completely wrong. So when he qualified for the old age pension, he was surprised. He was older than he thought he was. Oh, bless him. Okay, so let's go and have a look at the comments. I'm going to scroll all the way back up now because we've had a lot through. Scrolling. Okay, so Claire says, I do have a confusing family member which has a different birthday in the 1939 register and some of the other records I'm finding. I think I may have to order her birth certificate to compare. Yes, good idea. Some of the documents I found have her baptism and her birth record before the date of birth on the 1939 register. I usually find the 1939 register is accurate. True, I have personally found that the 1939 register is accurate for birth dates as well, Claire. But as we all know, the information there is only as good as the person providing it. And remember that the forms were filled out by the head of the household and then they were copied into the books by the enumerator. Mistakes did happen, unfortunately. Let's have a look. I'm scrolling. Anne says, my great-grandma said she was 29 on her marriage certificate, but in fact she was 31. Took a while to find her birth. The other interesting thing is my great-grandfather was 19 when they married. Wow, that's quite an age difference, actually. Okay, scrolling. Lynn says, my second great-grandmother and siblings from Roscommon Island. The Roman Catholic baptism dates are more important than birth dates. Not sure they know their actual birth dates from the 1830s. Do you know what? This actually came up in the Wednesday session, Lynn. I don't know whether you caught it. Excuse me, I'm just going to have a sip of water. It came up then, and Thomas and Jen were saying how those in Ireland maybe didn't put, what's the phrase I'm looking for? They didn't put too much emphasis on a birth date, and the baptism date was more important. And then there was some debate in the comments as to whether that was actually true. And I suppose it would have varied from place to place, family to family, parish to parish, I suppose. So maybe we can't be too exact in that assumption, perhaps. Diane says, my main answer to the birth date question is that people in the past, even in the not too distant past, didn't have all the ID we have readily in our pockets and our purses. Yes, that's a really, really good point, Diane. And for the many, more important date was the baptism. Again, let's look back to the baptism question. And the date they might need to ask the priest or pastor to check. Exactly. This is so important. This is all important context. Right, okay, I'm scrolling. Oh, Sylvia says, sorry, I can't join you all this week. I'm busy thesis writing. Well, I don't know whether you're still listening, Sylvia, but good luck, and I hope it's going well. Okay, let's keep scrolling. Hazel saying, sorry not to be with you this week, but I already have 2 online events lined up, and that is all my brain can cope with. That's okay. We'll catch you next time, Hazel, don't worry. Rita says, my grandmother lied about her age so she could marry my grandfather. The marriage certificate says 19 years old, but she was actually 16. Actually, speaking of 16-year-old brides, if you've got anybody who may have eloped to Scotland, we do have some irregular Scottish marriages and cross-border marriages. Go and have a look at those. Those are absolutely fascinating. Paul says, my great uncle lied about his age to fight in World War I, found out on his records on Findmypast that his mother had tried to get him back by writing and saying he lied. They refused to release him and he got killed. Oh, Paul. I feel bad for doing the thumbs up now. That's really sad. Georgia says, my Irish great-grandfather's date of birth fluctuated on each census. I think that's quite common, isn't it? By as much as 10 years. I really think he didn't know his actual birth date and made it up as he went along. I think some people did. Cindy says, I find the incorrect stuff on the census as interesting as the accurate. That's a really good point. It tells you about the family relationships and not just a mistake. And she's given an example here. My ancestor not only wasn't married, but always said wife, but lost 10 years between the census as she married a man 10 years her junior. There you go. Excuse me, I've got to need lots of water today. Okay. Lovely. Okay, so I think that's almost to the end of question of the week. I'm just going to read out Dave's comments. He says, with the dates of birth, you and all family history websites on average get the year of birth wrong because the censuses were mainly taken at the end of March and people recorded their age at the last birthday. Yes, because we talked about age a moment ago, didn't we? So for the most of them, it's the previous year. This is really important, actually. It's a really good point, Dave. So always go and make sure you check that original image as well, because that will give the actual age rather than the year they were born as we record it on the transcriptions. Andrew saying the Methodist records put both dates on the baptism registry. That's very good of them. Lovely. And Sue says my 2 times great-grandfather lied about my great uncle to get him into the Navy as a boy. The local vicar even confirmed the information. Well, there you go. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll move on, keep adding comments and everything into the comments field. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have a quick chat about family photographs. And there is a reason behind this, and I'll get to this in a second. But recently, there was a call out by the Antiques Roadshow for items. And with the current climate, the idea is that you submit your item ahead of time. The team will then decide what they want to, the items and the people they want to bring in for the filming to make sure, regulations are complied with, etc. So my mum was thinking she wanted to submit an item. So she decided on a German cap ribbon that she found amongst my dad's belongings, and it was handed down to him. And when the Antiques Roadshow got back to her, they asked her for some more information. We didn't really know much about it. So what she did, she started asking around my dad's siblings, so my aunt and my uncle. And then she's been chatting and digging around. And when she was digging around, she actually found a stash of photographs that my late father had of his family. And I just wanted to share some of them with you. Some of these I'd never seen before, some of them I had. So this is my paternal grandfather. This is Cecil Dennis Jones. He served with the 8th Army in World War II, in Egypt and in Italy. And according to Findmypast expert Paul Nixon, he was one of the desert rats. It's also written to my darling wife Eileen, love Den, and it's also got on the back when this was sent, when it was taken. He also kept a diary during the Second World War. My uncle has got that at the moment. So that's going to be my next task, is getting that diary. So keep an eye out for that. This next photo is of my nana. This is Eileen, Mary Eileen Dobbs. Oh, I forgot to say actually that Cecil died in 1960. He had a burst stomach ulcer, and my dad was 2 years old at the time. So my nana actually raised 4 children on her own, but she did later remarry. Now, I've been told that I look a little bit like her. I don't know. I think I'm a combination of my nana and my maternal grandmother, but I don't have a picture of her to hand. So she was from Lancashire. Her father was from Yorkshire, and her mother's family were actually from Northern Ireland. So the next photo I've got is a bit small. I'd never seen this before. These are Eileen's grandparents. I don't know if you can see that very well. It was taken in 1951. Their names are Charles Dobb and Catherine Welsh. And as I said, I'd never seen photographs of them before at all. So that's my great grandparents. Anya saying he's a handsome chap. Yes, my grandfather, excuse me, was a handsome chap. I do have some other photos as well, but I don't have time to show you more. This next one is of my nana with her siblings. So Arnold, Edna, and May. I've never seen this before either. This one I absolutely love. This is of Cecil's sisters, so my great aunts. These are Alice, Audrey, and Kit. And from my childhood, I do actually remember my great auntie Alice and my great auntie Audrey. None of them are with us any longer, but just look how fashionable they are. I absolutely love this photograph. And the last one I've got is another small one, I'm afraid. This, I think, shows great auntie Alice with who I think is Nellie, who is my great grandmother. And I've never seen this before. I've never seen a photograph of her. So if it is her, Nellie Griffiths Rogers, I just think that's lovely. I love coming across photos of ancestors that I've never seen before. There's just something so lovely about it. I've got goosebumps. You know how often I get goosebumps on these. But that's all the photographs. So the point in showing you those is, okay, I did want to share them with you because I think us all sharing discoveries and our passion for the past is important. But what I thought we would do is in a couple of weeks' time, we'll do a Fridays live on your photographs. So if you've got a treasured family photograph that you are happy to share, please email it to me at community@findmypast.com. I'll put that in the email address in the comments if Niall isn't quicker than me. Community@findmypast.com. Let's see if hopefully that's gone in there. Email me the photo, email me who they are, their relation to you, and a little bit of background. And what I really want are the photographs that, you know, like this one for me. I saw this and it was the first time I had laid eyes on my great-grandmother. So those are the kind of photographs I want. I will put them into a presentation and we will have a whole session on them in a couple of weeks' time. So I hope that sounds good to you. And yeah, before we move on to talking about a little Welsh colony, we'll have another look at the comments. So Jen asking, how many photos can we submit? In the interest of squeezing them all into an hour, Jen, I'm thinking 1, maximum 2, everybody, maximum 2 photos, okay? Because I want to include as many people's photographs as possible. Tess asking, what sort of photo are you looking for? So a photo of an ancestor when you came across it, it was the first time you'd seen them. But again, I'm happy just to see a photograph that you treasure of an ancestor. Rosie saying, I have literally hundreds. How are you going to pick just one? I don't know. I'm just scrolling back up a little bit here. William saying, old photos with wrong names on can be confusing. Yes. Some of these do actually have names on the back. So I know that this one is my great-grandparents, Eileen's parents, because on the back it says mum and dad taken in 1951, and it's in her handwriting, in my grandmother's handwriting. But yes, take them with a pinch of salt, do your own research and cross-reference, because what do we say about taking other people's research as gospel? Don't do it. Andrew saying, what's the most distant relative you've met, Ellie? Oh, I don't know, actually. We've got cousins over in Australia and they come over every now and then when they can. Yeah, I think that there's some distant cousins, I think. Fantastic. Hilary saying my favourite photo is already on my blog. Well, hopefully we can do that in a couple of weeks' time. I'll be really excited for that, and hopefully you've all got some photos you can send me. Okay, so now let's move on. What I wanted to talk about next, to link in with our Welsh, our Welshness that we've been doing this week. So we've been promoting Welsh records, Welsh resources, and things like that. I thought I'd talk a little bit about a weladva. And now please forgive my pronunciation. I'm not a fluent Welsh speaker, even though I am Welsh, and I really wish I was a fluent Welsh speaker. So a weladva is in Patagonia, and if you don't know, it's a settlement over in Argentina where Welsh is still spoken there today by around, they think, 5,000 people, or at least somewhere between 1,000 and 5,000 people. I found the history around it absolutely fascinating. I actually learned about it originally when I was in school, and it was brought to my attention again because a community member this week commented on one of our social media posts saying one of their ancestors actually went over on the original ship to go and live in Patagonia, which I just thought was incredible. So I thought it'd be a good chance to bring this up again. So the idea of this Welsh colony all the way across the world in South America, it arose in the mid 1800s, and there was a chap called Michael Jones. He was a preacher. He noticed a lot of Welsh migrants who were leaving Great Britain to go, say, to Australia or to the United States, etc. They were settling there, but then they were, would you believe, assimilating too quickly. They were losing their Welsh identity, and quite importantly to him, losing the Welsh language. Excuse me. So his idea was to set up a sort of a little Wales away from Wales, where the culture could flourish and the language could flourish as well. So they considered a lot of different places for this Welsh colony, and then they were speaking to the Argentinian government at the time, and they managed to secure some land. So this scheme, where you would move from Wales to Argentina, this was widely publicised around Wales. There was a handbook that was published, and then 2 chaps went over to Patagonia to scope out the landscape. And then in July of 1865, around 153 Welsh settlers arrived in Patagonia aboard a tea clipper called the Mimosa. And this is the ship actually that our community member, his ancestor, was actually on, which is just fantastic. And there were a variety of people on board as well. So there were around 56 married adults. There were single men, single women, there were children. But what transpired is that their new home had been oversold slightly in the promotional material. They were told it was going to be very much like Wales, good for farming, etc. And it wasn't. It actually turned out to be much drier and more arid, and there was actually little drinking water. So what they did was, from where they landed, these settlers walked from their landing point into the valley of the Chubut River. And in the first few years, they struggled a lot with flooding because they were in the valley, and food was scarce as well. These people were farmers, and they were struggling to grow in these new arid conditions. So years went by, and the settlers were helped by locals after some initial violence. And they built canals, they built railways, and they even produced newspapers. And it's estimated, believe it or not, that by the end of the 19th century, around 4,000 people of Welsh descent were living there. Migration actually continued in small numbers up until the beginning of the First World War. And I also remember, as I said, we were taught this in school, and there was a girl. She was around my age, but I didn't actually go to the same school as her. She went to a Welsh medium school. She actually went over to Patagonia and lived out there for a few months, and she just said it was spectacular. But if you look at some of the photographs today, like they celebrate their own Eisteddfod, which is a celebration of Welsh culture that happens every year. Some of the traditional dress is very similar. Yeah, I just think it's really fascinating. And if you've not heard of it before, I hope that is interesting to you, and maybe you can go maybe do some more reading on it. Maybe you might have an ancestor or a relation who went over there, and maybe they came back. Who knows? So, what time are we? 37 minutes past. Okay, so the last thing on my agenda for today was the history of birthdays. And I was inspired to discuss this with you by two things. So first of all, my little sister, she had a birthday this week, and I'm going to be celebrating a rather big birthday myself very shortly. And also, as I've seen some of you discussing in the comments today, believe it or not, this also was part of the inspiration. The BBC replayed Judge Rinder's episode of Who Do You Think You Are a few nights ago. And I remember this particular episode when it was first on. I remember it being so poignant. But one of the things in particular was that Robert Rinder's grandfather was a Holocaust survivor. And when he arrived at his last concentration camp, he actually said he was younger than he actually was. And when the camp was liberated, he said that he was 16 years old when he was actually more like 21. And this was probably to be part of a scheme to rehome orphan Jewish children. He'd lost his parents and his 5 siblings during the Holocaust. So I do not blame him at all for telling a little porky about his lie, to make sure that he could be entered into this scheme and come to England to start a new life. I don't blame him at all. I think it's one of these occasions where that's a good lie, but that's just my opinion. So he went to Lake Windermere, if you saw the episode, which is it was just so poignant, with other orphan Jews, and from there he made a new home for himself. Victoria's saying, I cried so much. Do you know what? I cried the first time I watched it. I cried the other night when I was watching it again, because it's very emotional. I think Robert Rinder was really, I don't know, I think he was just really brave to discuss that, and it clearly affected him so much. But I'm going to go on to a tangent if I'm not careful, so I'll move on. Now, many of us as family historians, as we've already discussed in Question of the Week, we come across discrepancies amongst our ancestors' birth dates. They might be a year out, they might move around a bit, either because they forgot or because they needed to tell a little lie, like Robert's grandfather. So it got me thinking then, where did the tradition of celebrating the day you were born come from? Because today, We, go out for a meal, we go out for a drink, might have a party, we have birthday cakes, presents. In most cultures around the world, a birthday or a baptism day, for example, they're celebrated. So if we go back around 2000 years, for example, there's a Roman historian called Herodotus who mentioned that the Persians were celebrating their birthdays more than any other day of the year. And the Romans themselves, if they were wealthy, they would actually gift quite extravagant presents during birthdays. Then we've also got the Jewish tradition as well. So a girl celebrates her bat mitzvah on her 12th birthday, and a boy celebrates his bar mitzvah on his 13th birthday. So you've got those two particular birthdays that are marked in the Jewish tradition. And then according to one source I found, and I don't know how true this is, you can let me know your opinions on this in the comments. Medieval Christians apparently didn't celebrate their birthdays because they thought it was connected to sort of paganism, and that was apparently evil. So instead, especially later on, they celebrated their saints' days. So if they were named after a saint, that is the day that they would celebrate. And then you've got traditions, as I said, like birthday cakes. So apparently the Greeks were the first to actually have a birthday cake, so putting candles on a cake, but that was actually to celebrate the goddess Artemis. And then I think when I was doing the reading, the Romans were the first to celebrate birthdays for free men. And then by the time we come back, come forward hundreds and hundreds of years into Germany, and apparently the first birthday cakes as we know them today, they were made and used and eaten in Germany. And then another theory I came across, again, I'm not sure how true this is. Our ancestors' birth dates varied so much because birthday celebrations relied sometimes on wealth. So if your ancestor, like most of my ancestors, for example, they weren't royal, they weren't noble, they didn't have a title, they didn't really have much money to their names. They were just everyday people, everyday workers, farmers, miners. They probably wouldn't have been able to afford birthday celebrations. And so they might, because they're not marking it, they might not even remember the day that they were actually born. And today we rely on so much to tell us. Like, for example, you were talking in the comments earlier about passports and driving licenses. And we rely on things like diaries, address books, printed calendars that we have on our walls, and even social media to remind us of other people's birthdays as well. I mean, I'm terrible with forgetting birthdays. I do rely quite heavily on social media to tell me when people's birthdays are so I can wish them a happy birthday. I'm really bad. I'm really forgetful. And then I just think that all of that was not available 200 years ago. I think the closest thing you might have had would have been something like a family Bible or an equivalent. There was actually one for my dad's side of the family, but sadly that was destroyed during a flood. Don't worry though, we've got photocopies. And in the front of that, it does record, I think it's either the baptism or the birth dates of the children in the family. So yeah, let's just have a look in the comments and see what your thoughts are on this before I continue. Just scrolling back up. Scrolling. Anya says, I did trace cousins to Argentina, even though they weren't on my Welsh side. They were Scottish who had moved from London, and the family changed from cabinet makers to piano makers. So the second generation ended up moving to Argentina to make pianos over there. That must be quite a skill to be a piano maker. John saying more than 200 people left Patagonia for I can't pronounce that, I'm so sorry, I'm not even going to try. In 1902 after encountering difficult conditions in Awaladfa. Yes, absolutely. And you've shared a link there, John. Thank you for that. Going back to Robert Rinder's Who Do You Think You Are episode, Paul says, I've just restored a picture of Robert's that was on a TV show. It's on my Facebook page. I sobbed at that episode. I think we all did, Paul. It was it just gets you right here, you know. I mean, you just can't. I can't. Once I start crying, I can't. I can't turn off the tears. I just can't. Um, Anya saying, I think the who do you think you are that upset me the most was Stephen Fry's heartbreaking. Yeah, that's another one that really hit home actually. And another one was Boy George's. That just thinking about that actually, again, I've got goosebumps. This is what happens when I get emotional. I get goosebumps. Let's move on here. So Victoria saying another tip for birthdays found on electoral registers is the Y and J. What's the Y and J, Victoria? As the Y will be eligible to vote the following year. Could you elaborate for me? I really want to know what that is. Elaine saying I always lie about my age. Both my sons are now older than me. Do you know what? Actually, my grandmother is 82, and every birthday, when her birthday is coming up in March, she always takes 20 years off it, and she always goes, yes, I'm going to be 62 this year, which is funny because there's actually 20 years between my dad and my maternal grandmother, so that never quite added up for me. Even as a young child, I didn't believe her. Daphne saying, surely if you settle in a new country, you adopt the country's culture. Look what happened to the Maori people, the indigenous Red Indians, etc. Yeah, absolutely. Andy saying, I always forget about this. Hello, everyone. I'm glad you could join us, Andy. Thank you. It was my birthday 19 days ago. I was 21 again. I'm going to be 21 again at the end of the month. Believe it or not. I'm not. Let's have a look here. So Niall sharing some information about Welsh family history records for you. James saying, if I move to another country, I would certainly want to learn the language first. Yeah, that's a really good point. I think with this particular instance with the Welsh settlers in Argentina, they wanted somewhere they could go where they could keep their traditions and the Welsh language. And I think, I don't want to get into this too much, but the Welsh language was not widely spoken, or I think widely encouraged is more the correct phrase during that time. So they wanted somewhere that they could go and they could speak their language freely without having to speak English, for example. But I won't go into much further detail there. Now, Miko's comment. I always worry about reading Miko's comments out loud before reading them in my head first, but we'll give it a go. I consider it a blessing that our ancestors didn't have Facebook. Can you imagine how disappointing it would be to know your great-great-grandparents hated Mondays and shared nothing but photos of dogs in waistcoats with a crush on the guy who delivered the hay? It would spoil some of the magic and the mystery. I don't know. I think that'd be brilliant. If I came across something like that nowadays about my ancestors, Miko, I'd be all over that. Anya saying, Boy George's Who Do You Think You Are episode is really interesting. Victoria, J is for Jura. Thank you, Victoria. Janet, I've got a family Bible and you can see the ink blots where my great aunts tried to change their birth years so they could be 5 years younger. That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Tessa saying, on birthday recording, I remember hearing that in Ireland there were consistent discrepancies between the 1901 and 1911 censuses because of the introduction of the old age pension. So people were trying to be included in that. That's really interesting. Patricia saying, years ago they relied on the church to tell them what day it was related to saints' days. They didn't bother about the other days, they were just work days. The seasons were important. The Greek Orthodox Church still celebrates the name days and saints' days. Thank you for sharing that. Amiko saying, it's actually very rare to learn the language before you arrive in historical migration. Access to tuition was very rare. People came over and picked it up as they arrived. Exactly. Now, excuse me again, I'm sniffling a little bit. But so, if I'm honest, that was everything I wanted to cover today. And considering I had a really packed out agenda, we finished at 10 to the hour. So that's good. So what we'll do is I think we will leave it there for today. But before we say goodbye, I want to let you know that next week Alex is going to be back for Friday's Live, and he may or may not be doing a little something around the Blitz anniversary. Just need to confirm with him. And then on Wednesday, you've got double trouble. You've got Miko and myself talking about Welsh family history, about how you've got to keep certain things in mind when searching Welsh family history, how it differs from England in certain aspects. So you've got two for the price of one next week. So make sure you join us 4 o'clock on Wednesday for that. And just trying to think if there's anything else I need to update you on. We might have a new product release coming next week, something new, something exciting that you can try. But keep an eye out for that. I'm going to be very vague about that. Make sure you continue to share your discoveries in the Find My Past forum and on social media. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube. Goodness, there are a lot of them. So yeah, thank you very much for joining, everybody. We'll leave it there for today. I suppose the last thing to say is to say bye to everybody. So thank you, Daphne. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Paul. Thanks, Niall, for doing the comments. I really appreciate it. It means you can interact with him while I natter on for 50 minutes. So yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. It always is a pleasure to be able to connect with you in this way. And remember, if you would like a photograph going into a future Fridays Live, a treasured family photograph, or one like this where you found the photograph and it's the first time you saw your ancestors, like it is with my great grandparents here. If you want to share that and you want it to go into a presentation, email me at community@findmypast.com. I'd like the photograph, a little bit about your ancestors, how they're related to you, and a little bit of the story behind them. That'd be lovely. So thank you very much. I will leave you with me and my grandfather, the handsome chap, Cecil Dennis Jones, and as we say bye to people. So bye Jane, bye Rosie, bye Ellen, bye Georgia, bye Lynn, bye Andy. Have a good weekend, one and all. Exactly. And Anya and James as well. Fantastic. Right. Have a lovely weekend, everybody, and I will catch you next time. Bye-bye.